Hey y'all, welcome back to Dots and Beyond. My name is Beth. Today we are setting up May in my son's custom bullet journal. Let's go ahead and get started. The theme we've chosen for May is the flower moon. The flower we've chosen to pair with our moon is the rose. Kenny chose that because it's important to him. And the flower moon this year falls on May 5th. That is the full moon for May. There's somebody very important in Kenny's life who has a birthday on that date as well. For the moon portion of this setup, I'll be using these stamps that I got, I think, off of Amazon. I might have gotten them off of Etsy. I will find those and link them down below for you. I have used them in my Edgar Allan Poe reading journal setup as well. We're going to use this one Colors of the World marker in the very light rose color. And then I have a silver gel pen and one Pigma Micron. We're trying to keep things fairly simple. It's also a fairly thin micron. But then I have also mixed up some paint for this setup. Like, we keep painting in Kenny's journal. I don't know why I don't use the paint in my own journal. Keep using it in his journal. This is a very light pink as well. It is a mixture of white, a tiny bit of this red color, and then a little bit of silver as well. We are keeping things super simple this month. It might be a little bit reminiscent of his March setup, but don't worry, next month is Kenny's birthday month for June, and he assures me that he's got something up his sleeves that'll be a little bit more elaborate, but he hasn't shared with me yet what that will be. On the left, I put a very simple quote page with no embellishment and a quote from Oscar Wilde that reads, "With freedom, books, flowers, and the moon, who could not be happy?" On the right, I've sketched out a rose, and we're going to add a full moon to this as well. Now, these full moon stamps I think are fairly accurate, and I did not, y'all, look at which direction I was stamping these. I was not that specific, so do not come at me and say the moon is supposed to go a quarter ways this way or a quarter ways that way. We just put them down on the page. And then the moons and the roses I am leaving black and white, but we are framing each one of them out in some sort of pink arch. The arch sizes vary throughout the journal setup, but we're going to do those with the paint and then outline each one of these arches in silver just to give it a little bit of a polished edge. Now, both the stamp ink as well as the Pigma Microns are archival ink, which means I can paint around them without smearing that ink. So if you are going to use ink and paint together, make sure you're using some sort of medium that is an archival ink so that you're not smearing black ink around your page. And that's it, y'all. That's our very simple yet beautiful cover page for May in Kenny's journal. I'm going to let this dry a little bit and then we'll be back to move on to the calendar page. Now, for this cover page, I inked first and then painted around. I'm also going to do that for the calendar page, but the Pigma Microns will ink over top of the paint. And I do change my method a little bit later on. I don't know if I necessarily prefer one or the other. In fact, the stamp ink will actually go over the paint as well, but I wanted to make sure that my moons didn't have any pink in them, so I definitely stamp first and then draw my roses later after doing the paint. But again, both of them will work. So if you want to try doing this, you can paint and then ink over top of it later, and it will still work as well. Also, I did find roses challenging to draw, and I was a little worried about doing their leaves with the little jagged edges, and as I was Googling simple rose doodles, most of those had done away with having the little jagged edges that are on most rose leaves, and so I decided I was going to do away with those as well. Here I'm setting up the functional part of the calendar, and this spacing is exactly the same as I did in my own May journal. I think it's 6 dot grid spaces by 6 dot grid spaces for each one of the days, with space on the right for a doodle and some space along the bottom for additional doodles. Here I'm putting in some of the moon stamps. You know, when I say that this setup went super quickly, it really did. I only had 2 hours and 15 minutes of footage for this, and most of that was drying time. My HelloFresh delivery also came in the middle of that, and I just walked away to go get that from the door and put it away in the fridge, and came back and resumed doing my setup. So I edited out probably, I don't know how much, just dead air time where paint was drying or silver gel pen was drying, or I was, away from the desk doing something else. I probably have, if it wasn't for the drying time, it probably only took me less than an hour, maybe 45 minutes to do this entire setup. So that being said, that light pink marker that I'm using could be used to do this entire setup instead of the paint, and you could knock this out in 45 minutes. Now here I have masked off, and look, I have torn this page with that washi tape. And if you watched my May setup, I used that washi tape to mask off almost every page, and not once did it rip. And here it ripped the page in Kenny's journal. The other thing that really sped up this setup was just using my natural cursive, my natural handwriting. Okay, that will wrap up the calendar page. It is now dry and we are ready to move on to Kenny's spending log as well as his notes page. And now that I'm over here, I'm going to have to deal with this little bit of torn paper, and I think I'm just going to pluck it off and it'll be fine. It's going to remove a couple of dots, but I'm going to write over most of the spots anyway, and it'll just be a-okay. For this spread, I'm doing the decoration down the middle, and like I said, I'm going to change my pattern up just a little bit. I'm going to stamp first and then paint and then ink with the Pigma Micron. And again, as it goes along through the course of it, I'm not really sure if I prefer one over the other. One kind of gives me a little bit more control as to going over pencil lines. The second method, I kind of have some pencil lines that are buried beneath paint and I can't necessarily cover them up or erase them. They're faint, they're not really that noticeable. I think they probably bother me more than anybody else. Kenny's spending log is pretty simple. It has a column for the date, the item purchased, the amount it cost, and then 2 columns for him to indicate if it was a need or if it was a want, and then he can total those things at the bottom. And then I also give him sections to note his paydays and those amounts, as well as the beginning and ending balances of the month for his checking and savings account. Then the notes page for him is a catch-all space or a brain dump space. Neither one of us like the phrase brain dump, so in his journal we just use the term notes. I did end up adding a little bit of a frame to this page because it just felt like it was kind of empty and it was lacking a little something, so just added a little bit of frame to that. And that will wrap up this spread with the spending log as well as his notes page, and we're going to move on to Kenny's first weeklies for May 1st through 7th and then May 8th through the 14th. And if you've been around for a little bit, you know that Kenny has had basically the same sort of weekly setups for a long time with 8x8 boxes. I just rearranged those 8x8 boxes for every day on the page. Last month, we added a Dutch door that had a task list for him, and he really enjoyed having that task list and enjoyed using it. And so we are completely changing his weekly, and he is going to have a small space to write his dailies or his daily events on the sides of each spread. So 1 week on the left and 1 week on the right, and then each week will have its own individual task list down the middle. Now, after I set this up, I actually like this weekly setup, and it might be one that if I don't have a really heavy week that I might default to using. So you might see me use this setup coming up over the summer or something as well. I don't know, I just really liked the way that it looked, and I thought, well, I might be able to use that as well. So here I have gone ahead and put in our moon on one side, painted in our arches. Here I'm highlighting every other line of the task lists, and then the little pink bubbles you see are going to be for the days of the week. And then the last thing I'm going to do is come in with the Pigma Micron, put in a mini calendar on each page, highlight the relevant week, and put in those areas for the dailies. The type of task list that I've put on each one of these pages is the Alistair method, where you list Monday through Sunday on here and then have a space for the task. I've had some individuals indicate that they don't really understand the Alistair method. I think, if I recall correctly, there's a really great blog post on the Bullet Journal website explaining the Alistair method and how to use it. If I can find that, I'm going to link it below because it probably explains it a whole lot better than I could. The final step here is to again outline our little arches with that silver gel pen, and then we'll be ready to move on to this next set of weeklies. I'm going to set up this next pair exactly like I did this last one, just varying that artwork. So while I do that, let's learn a little bit about the flower moon. The flower moon is a term used to describe the full moon that occurs in the month of May. The name was given by First Nations who used the full moon as a way to track the changing seasons. The name comes from the abundance of flowers that bloom during this time of year, signaling the arrival of spring. For centuries, people have been fascinated by the beauty and mystery of the moon. The flower moon is no exception. With its soft glow and delicate appearance, it is a time to celebrate the renewal of nature and the promise of warmer weather to come. So when you catch the glimpse of the flower moon this May, take a moment to appreciate the wonder and magic of our universe. So here we have May 15th through the 21st with a crescent moon and a rose laying on the side, And then May 22nd through the 28th, I just went back to a full moon and no rose embellishment at all. And like I said, this is a super functional, super simple one-page weekly that I might even adopt for myself from time to time. Moving on to our final spread in Kenny's May setup, and if you've been around for a little while, this will be no surprise. On the left side, we are going to have a playlist, and on the right side will be his May reflections. I'm going to start by popping in some moons. For the playlist spread, I'm going to paint a little arch in the top left corner, and for the reflection page, I'm going to go ahead and paint it in the center so that I can then put the reflection categories around it. I then highlighted where those 4 reflection categories will go, and we'll do more with that later. Right now we're going to look on the playlist page, and I needed a little something to create the headers with. I had to dig out another stamp pad. This one here is from Archer and Olive because it has this tiny little moon on it. This came in a sub box back in March of 21 maybe. I don't know how long ago that was. It was kind of the travel themed sub box. It was a long time ago, but I just wanted that tiny moon stamp. And then writing in our headers for playlist and our reflection areas, which are liked, learned, lacked, and longed for. And then of course I need to sketch in the last rows for this particular setup. My last step here was I felt like this page was missing something, and I decided to use this silver gel pen to go ahead and put in some ruled lines for the reflection area. It just helped fill in that white space and give it a little more interest. Of course, I also needed to outline my arches. Now, the other thing I decided to do at this point with this silver pen was add some little stars and dots within our arches throughout the setup. You cannot see them, I don't think, even through the flip through, but they are there. Okay, y'all, that is it. That is Kenny's custom May 2023 bullet journal setup with a flower moon theme. It still has a little bit of a magical bent to it. If you made it this far, leave us either a rose, moon, or both emoji down in the comments below. Don't forget to check out the description box for links to all of the supplies that were used in this video, and including Kenny's gorgeous journal, which is from Archer and Olive. You can use my code DMB10 for 10% off of any of your Archer and Olive orders. I have some additional content dropping this week, including a new work bullet journal setup as well as a reading wrap up for the month of April. Now, if you like Kenny's journal, I will go ahead and leave a link to his playlist down in the comments below where you can check out all of those videos. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked this video, you know what to do. Please go ahead and give it a big thumbs up. Subscribe if you haven't already. So many of you are not subscribed, and I will catch you in the next one.